Hello everyone, this is Jeff again with RigIT. This is going to be our second tutorial on automatic rigging with RigIT for computer animation and computer graphics. In our first tutorial we went into a lot of depth on how to actually manually skin the mesh and do some of the editings on the bone weights. But as you probably noticed last time, the that can be a pretty laborsome process. So most people probably want to have more than just skeletal embedding with their rig. So what we're going to show in this tutorial is how to actually get both the skeletal embedding and the weight information out of RigIT so that you have the completed rigging process as you go to animate your model. So we're going to start in Blender again, and we're just going to go ahead and clear the scene and import our faux Lydia model from last time. And as you can see, she's a nice bald lady, but we can't animate her. No matter how many times we click on her and try to move her arm around, it won't happen. And the reason for that is if we look over here in our object tree, there isn't anything other than just the model itself. Now, if you've been working on the model in Blender and you don't have it saved to file yet, what you do at that point is you just go ahead and export your model out to an object file or a .obj file. And you can do that by going, make sure you have the model selected, go File, Export, .obj or wavefront file. But if you have, like we do with our faux Lydia here, and you already have the model on your desktop somewhere, then all you have to do in that case is import it into RigIT. So we're going to go ahead and open RigIT now, and looking at RigIT, once we have it open, we can go ahead and import our model into RigIT. But it's not rigged yet. And in order to rig it at this point, we still need an animation skeleton. So now we're going to go ahead and import our animation skeleton. Just pick one of them. And as you can see, the skeleton is pre-aligned with Lydia, but it's not rigged yet. It's not even embedded yet. Now the one thing you do want to make sure when you're doing this, right now RigIT is still a near pose rigger, which is pretty good, but you do have to have the animation skeletal pose similar to that of your model. So when you're looking at your model, keep that in mind and make sure that, for example, the feet are pointing in the right direction and that they're on the bottom of your model instead of up by the head. But once you have everything oriented correctly, then just go ahead and click on the RigIT button. And now you can see that the skeleton is correctly embedded into Lydia. Now we're not showing you the bone weights here, but the bone weights do exist, so your model is completely rigged at this point. So now we want to be able to use it in a animation editor. So we're going to go ahead and click on Export Collada File. And we'll just save it to file. And then once we have our Collada file saved to file, we'll go ahead and import it into some other environment such as Autodesk or Blender. Now we're going to go ahead and this time we're going to try starting with Autodesk. And we're going to import our Collada file. Here we go. Into Autodesk. And we'll just go ahead and maximize one of the views. And as you can see, we have the skeleton over here, and it is, if you can see the squares here, we've got the hand embedded there. And let's see if we can see some of the other bones. It's a little bit hard to view the bones in Autodesk just by looking at it. But if we go ahead and select one of the limbs, such as this one. Let's just go click on rotate, and we can see that we're able to move our hand. So she's able to shake her hand. Move our arm up, maybe out a little bit. Let's do the right arm. Here we go. Leg. So, as you can see, she's now animatable. And we can do the same thing in Blender. Now, Blender is a little bit funny, which is why we didn't show you Blender first. Now, Blender is a little bit crazy. It doesn't really interpret the Cloud file very well. In fact, if there's any community feedback on what's going on, we'd love to hear it because we've been working on this for a little while and we haven't figured out what is Blender doing. But to show you what's going on, let's go ahead and start with a fresh scene. Clean out the scene nice and get it nice and clear of anything else or anything we don't need in it, and import our Cloud file. So this is the thing that I'm talking about when I say that Blender does some artifacts here. This bone right here is our right hand, and this bone right here actually doesn't exist in the Cloud file. This is actually how Blender's interpreting the leaf node of the hand bone, and we're not really sure why it does it. Let's go over to X-ray and see if it cut the head off too. So, yeah, and Blender also a lot of times likes to cut the head off. So, not entirely sure why Blender is doing that, and we'd love feedback if we can get it. And how to get this in here better for y'all, or what to avoid. But it doesn't affect our animation, but it looks kind of messy, so we're going to go ahead and clean it up for you real quick. Or I'm going to clean it up for you real quick. Same thing with the foot. You can also delete the extra bones if you don't want. It shouldn't affect your animation at all. Just and being lazy and just moving them instead. Although I guess that's not necessarily lazy, but it's the approach I've chosen. I'm going to stick with it. Okay, so now that our scene's cleaned up a little bit, let's go over to the pose mode. And you can see in the pose mode that we are, in fact, able to rotate the hands and animate our Lydia just like we did in Autodesk. Let's click on, there we go. So she's nice and animated. Okay, that had to hurt. So there you go. Let's move her leg out. So there you go. Nice animated Lydia. Now, there is one thing that you might want to keep in mind as you're animating, and it really depends on the model you're working with and the resolution of the system, and more than anything else, the beginning pose. So if we noticed when we rigged Lydia here, she was not in T-pose. T-pose is the easiest pose to actually rig. Lydia was not, so animating her is a little bit more difficult, or actually getting the rig correctly is a little bit more difficult. And you might have to clean up some areas like the pits here. So just keep that in mind. Depending on what you're doing, you may or may not. We have developed a couple methods that we were looking at implementing to clean this up for you so you don't have to worry about it. But what we've decided instead is to really focus on our generation rigger and go ahead and get that out. We're focusing on that and honestly really pretty excited about it because it will be a skeletonless, widgetless rigger. You actually just load the model and it will automatically completely rig the model by itself without you having to supply anything, and it won't matter if you're talking about a bipedal or a chair or spaceship or whatever you want to input into the system. It'll tear it apart and go ahead and rig it for you by based off of the model itself. And you will be able to map your own animation skeletons to it if you want later. Or obviously, if you need to change something, you can definitely go ahead and try to do that afterwards if you want. But that's what we're focusing on instead of cleaning up these little areas. And then if we need to do some more work on that later, we'll come back to it. That said, happy animating, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you all get a lot of really good use out of RigIT, and please feel free to send any comments my way. Thank you.